Hey there, fellow friends and mixers. This is Jay Shlomo at Come Mix Time, and today I want to show you a pretty much foolproof mixing setup that will give you consistently great results every time, no matter the genre, and also show you why SSL's free 360 software is the perfect tool for it. So, let's get started. Wouldn't it be great going from this to this just by routing your raw tracks to a couple of buses? For this to happen, we'll set up kind of a streamlined version of Michael Brauer's infamous Brauerize multibus mixing method, clear up some myth about it, and as said, use SSL 360 as our virtual mixing console for an ultra-fast and super convenient workflow. First of all, it's totally free. You don't need to have SSL's own plugins or controllers to use it. You can easily map the plugins you already have and use with the 360 link wrapper, which is also free, and SSL even provide you with ready-to-go mappings for other SSL channels by Brainworks, Waves, and UAD. But you can essentially map every plugin you want to work with a 360 framework. If you look at these tracks here in the console view, for example, you notice these look different. And that's because on my subgroup tracks, I love to use this P450 EQ, which I also mapped with a 360 link, so I can operate them within the virtual console just like all the other channel strips. So as you can see, everything is right in front of you. You can easily zoom to even see your sends down here and scroll with the mouse wheel and making sure here you don't accidentally turn a knob. So moving around is super fast. And you can also map your favorite compressors with a 360 link. And then you can see them all in the console center section here. So that's why 360 is perfect for a multi-bus mixing setup. And if you own SSL's meter plugin, which is not free but super affordable, you even have all your essential metering up here too. Now, having worked on a real SSL console for quite some time myself, and also having tried so many different control surfaces, to me this workflow comes closest to actually working on a real desk when you're in the box. Well, pretty much ironically, I actually prefer using this without SSL's dedicated UC1 controller, because we have one in the studio. It's really great, super well built, fun to use, but it still forces you to work one channel at a time. And although navigation via the wheel and display is easy, I feel it takes away my focus. So with the mouse and 360 in front of me, I can just go, okay, so I need to do EQ on the kick here, and now EQ the overheads, and now saturate the bass a little more over here. And this immediacy is what a console workflow is all about. So you have no opening of plugins one at a time, no searching for the channel on the controller. You're just grabbing knobs and going with the flow. And many people who never have been even near to a real console, they're made to believe that there's some magic mojo to be had from using all these fancy emulations of analog consoles or whatever analog stuff. But to me, the real mojo of working on a console comes from this workflow. Because with the same controls on every channel, you can work really fast and intuitively. And most important, you don't think about choices, you just mix. And of course, you can still use special inserts if you wish to and feel you really need them. So let's start by opening up this Metric AB plugin again here. If you don't have it, go and grab it. It makes referencing and comparing as easy as hitting this AB button here. And whether you're comparing against the rough mix, a different mix version, a reference track, or whatever, it's so easy. You can even compare frequency response here, or the dynamics, the stereo width. You can listen to certain frequency ranges only here with the filters. And you can sync up and loudness match up to 16 tracks here. So first thing I do when I start a mix is making sure I have the rough mix in sync with my actual session here. And I learned the hard way how important it is to pay attention to the rough, the levels, the balance, the effects, because the artist will have listened to this a billion times, and whatever they tell you, In the end, all I want is a radio-ready version of the rough. No more, but no less. So let's listen again and evaluate what we actually need to do here.
I'm not a good beggar, don't need to scream to be heard. I like my things absurd. I like a man who's a man of his word. I like the sweetest desserts. Eat it until it hurts. It's what I deserve. If you wanna flirt, meet me at the edge of the world. You can look up the sky blue sea. You can look down the deep blue peak. You ain't never find someone better than me. Longer than my skirt. I sing with evening birds. Fuck what you heard. Don't wanna be disturbed. I got the soul of an upler's nerd. All the pretty flowers, flowers. All the pretty flowers, flowers. Are they pretty? Are they pretty? All the pretty flowers, flowers. All the pretty flowers, flowers. All the pretty flowers, flowers. Are they pretty? Are they pretty? All the pretty flowers, flowers.
Okay, so having produced and recorded this myself, I still need to be as objective as possible here. And to me, the rough feels really good, where the instruments sit and how the vibe of the track comes across. But there's definitely too much buildup in the low mids we need to address. And we also need to put some shine on top. Her voice could have more authority and character. And everything also feels pretty dry and a little narrow. So I hear more depth and width is needed. So let's hit the A-B button again and see how far just dropping the raw tracks into the template here gets us in accomplishing this.
You can look up the sky blue sea. You can look down the deep blue peak. You ain't never find someone better than me. Longer than my skirt. I sing with evening birds.
Pretty awesome, right? Basically, we already have a version of the rough that sounds like a record while keeping the vibe and balance intact. And so far, we haven't even touched a single track. So let's check this session again. All the tracks you can see here have the SSL 4K channel because I just happen to have the SSL subscription available to me. And they also have the Slate virtual channel on the SSL setting on all the tracks to kind of complete the virtual SSL console. You see, I'm using the old version of the Slate here because it has different oversampling options, and for some reason I prefer this. So that's my console sound right there. And you see up here, there's also the UAD Studer tape machine as well. So it's ready to go, but on this track I just felt I don't need it, so it's deactivated for now. You see, all the tracks are neatly organized in color-coded folders, so which in Cubase, this is important only for organization. So unlike Pro Tools, where they have audio functions, here this is not the case. So every folder thus also contains a subgroup. So all my drums, guitars, and everything, they are routed to their respective subgroup within the folder. Those are then not sent directly to the stereo 2 bus, but to one of 4 stereo buses over here, which are labeled A, B, C, and D. And that's what they were called on the SSL 9000, on which Michael Brauer developed his approach. He calls them sub-stereos, and he just kept the letters, and so I adapted them as well. The idea is that you have 4 different compressors shaping the different musical layers of the arrangement to make them kind of push and pull independently from each other. And then you have your final stereo bus compressor gluing it all together. So all these compressors pretty much share the work. Let's mute everything else and listen to just the processing of the ABCD.
You can look up the sky blue sea. You can look down the deep blue peak. You ain't never find someone better than me. Hair longer than my skirt. I sing with evening birds. Fuck.
So there you have it. So many people expect like a magic cheat code or something, and most of them tend to hit these buses far too hard. You can hit them hard if the track needs it, but usually that's not what we want. So pay attention again to how the instruments interact with each other.
All the pretty flowers, flowers. All the pretty flowers, flowers. Are they pretty? Are they pretty? All the pretty flowers, flowers. All the pretty flowers, flowers.
So to me, this is almost like a 3D effect. It's subtle, but substantial. And the key for this to work is an initial calibration of the compressors. Because when routing your tracks here, you don't want your balance getting thrown off. This is important. And the way you do this is sending a sine wave test tone, which I believe every DAW comes with, at your preferred reference level to each of these compressors. Set them to the amount of gain reduction you want, and make sure their output is set to unity gain. So here I am using the common standard of -18 dBFS for 0 VU as my reference, and when I send this 1K tone to this bus here, for example, you see we get 1 dB of compression and retain -18 dBFS down here at the output. So it's unity gain. And this principle applies to all 4 of these. On B, which is for the rhythm section, so bass and drums, I like 3 dB of compression, but with a low ratio and still maintaining unity gain. The key is to choose the right compressor for each task and to set ratio, attack, and release before calibration. On A, we want kind of a smooth but grabby compressor with a rather fast attack and release to bring out the sustain of pianos and keyboards, pads, or strings here. On B, we want more of a medium fast attack and very fast release to make drums and bass groove, and also some kind of saturation, which the Drummer 1978 I'm using has on tap, and which is why I'm using the Distressor plugin with the Distortion 2 as my possible in-the-box replacement. Michael Brauer likes to use EQ on both A and B as well, but for now I want to keep this as simple as possible. On C, where guitars and leads go, we want something that can handle those dynamics, and on D, we want something smooth again, but with a higher ratio and some kind of widening for background vocals, effects, and pretty much everything that it needs to be wide and spacious, which is why I have the SPL Vitalizer plugin here, and you can see it's using some kind of stereo enhancement. So let's have a listen to A here, which in this mix gets the piano, the theremin, and the steel guitar. So can you hear how the compression grabs the piano and at the same time puts a sweet shimmer on everything? That's why I like this specific compressor, my Necotronics with beautiful Carnhill transformers, so much in this role here. And although I am using output gear here as the centerpieces of the setup, everything applies to plugins as well. And I invested a lot of time to make sure I have the best possible in-the-box replacements for all my analog stuff. Because when you use outboard, at some point it will fail and will need repair. So it's super important to have in-the-box replacements ready when this happens. So with these sub-stereos we already have created some kind of front-to-back perspective because of the different attack and release times here. Now let's look at these three guys over here. It's a concept I've been using for ages. I've been using the soft tube Tsar reverb for this, and if you want to read about the whole idea and setup, there's an article about it I wrote for Sound on Sound. I will link it in the description. If you like, check it out. When UAD recently came out with the Oceanway Deluxe plugin, I figured it's perfect for this job. Because essentially what I want is 3 positions in the same virtual studio room. And since the Oceanway offers 3 pairs of mics, close, mid, and far, it's pretty much perfect for this purpose. You see, I'm using the reverb mode here, not the remic, which is a completely different thing, beautiful thing. And I'm using the PA speaker setting. So you can see the giant PA speakers here, and the idea is to blast your signals through these speakers into the live room and then mic it up. You can see I'm using unity gain sense from all my groups or tracks here, except on the lead vocal, because I don't want it to be as loud in my virtual studio. Let's have a listen. So you hear this is just sounding like a band tracking in a nice studio. And what better sounding studio you could imagine than legendary Oceanway sound in Hollywood, California. It's so amazing, really. We can have the sound of these fantastic rooms in the plugin. Let's hear this in the context of the track. Perfect. To make it clear again, this is not supposed to make the track sound wet, but rather to give a nice depth of field you feel goes away when you hit the mute button. And the whole mix kind of collapses and misses the 3D-ness you have when these are running in the mix. So right next to it are 3 parallel buses, and Michael Brauer uses a lot more. That's for sure, but studying and using his setup extensively for at least a decade now, over time I found that I don't need most of them. You know, so many people, they just blindly copy his whole sophisticated template, and then they're just overprocessing the mixes because they don't know how to actually use all this. You know, and Brauer himself, he has always said the core philosophy of his way of working, this is what's important, and that you have to make all this your own which is what I did. And so over time, I kicked out everything out of my template, which I felt was just not really needed, because whatever is in your template, you're likely gonna use, because it's there. And sometimes you will not realize that you are actually over processing and you don't really need this. And I figured I don't want this to happen. So I came up with these 3 parallels eventually here. These do all I need, and they are, again, fed with unity gain sense from the tracks, just like the reverbs. And this is crucial because I want to have an exact copy of my mix going here. If I lower a fader over here, this is reflected in the parallels as well. The first one, called PA, this is for drums and bass. The second is for everything but drums and bass. And the third one is pretty much for everything. And sometimes I just send some tracks here that really need more attitude, but usually it's just everything. And these 3 then go to their own master fader here, so I can write them all together should I want to. So let's hear what these are doing. On this one here is my beloved pair of custom-built LA3As. Beautiful things which I will never sell. And usually I use them over here on C because everyone loves 3As on guitars, right? But on a track like this, I'm looking for more sustain in the drums, and the 3As are perfect for this. They're bringing out the room and the details of the drums. And that's why I use my pair of DBX 163Xs on C here. These have punch for decades and they are perfect for hard-hitting rock drums, but for the reasons I mentioned here, I switched them over with the 3As, and so I use them, the DBXs, on C for the guitars. On parallel B here is my Allen Smart C1. It's set up in dual mono, 2:1 ratio, fast attack, medium fast release. And this provides a nice glue, making sure the vocals, or whatever is the loudest instrument at any point, pushes its way to the front.
You can look up the sky blue sea. You can look down the deep blue peak. You ain't never find someone better than me.
Can you hear how the instruments kind of come up when she stops to sing and how she ducks them down when singing again? This is adding density and movement around the rhythm section. On the third parallel here, I'm using my Cybertron tube preamp. Pretty crunch job. Listen.
You can look up the sky blue sea. You can look down the deep blue peak. You ain't never find someone better than me.
Pay attention to how the drums are super distorted, but the vocals, for some reason, they still stay pretty clear. For this sound, I have to say, I haven't yet found a really comparable replacement in the box. This is perfect for adding beef and character to the mix or whatever tracks you send here. And what the Cybertron also does is feature the low-mid area, which typically we rather call low-mud area, but in a way that just sounds warm and not muddy at all. And now let's check what these 3 guys together do in the context of the mix.
All the pretty flowers, flowers. All the pretty flowers, flowers. Are they pretty? Are they pretty? All the pretty flowers, flowers.
Listen to how the track not just gets louder, but the dynamics change. So the rhythm section feels really solid now, while all the instruments and vocals are pushing and pulling around it, and the Cybertron adds warmth and character. And all this, it's not about level, it's about density. And my favorite way of pushing a chorus, for example, is not to just write the master fader up, but to write these parallels here, either individually or all of them. And to know where I'm coming from, I have these calibrated as well. If you notice, I put fader positions down here in the track names, so I always know where I need to start from. And if I take my tone again and route it to the stereo bus, but also doing a unity gain send to each of these parallels here, what I do is adjust the faders, so each of them is adding 1 dB of gain to the whole mix here. So that way, again, I can be sure that my balance is not thrown off when sending stuff here, because since PA is for drums and bass and PB is for everything else, I want those to be equal, so my mix balance pretty much stays the same when activating these. And since the Cybertron is usually for everything, I want this to add the same amount of gain too. Now, if you look here, you see this one called stereo actually is my master fader, where the ABCD and everything go to. It has just the virtual mix bus on it here on the SSL setting as well, and you see the fader is on -3 now. And this is to compensate for the total of 3 dB of gain we added with the parallels. Because I always want to make sure that when I A/B my session with the rough, they are about the same level.
You can look up the sky blue sea. You can look down the deep blue peak. You ain't never find someone better than me.
So for me, this works. I always check the loudest passages to be kinda equal. So in this case, the lower verses, of course, feel a bit louder in the mix, and that's good, because we want to raise the RMS level anyway. If you look at the numbers here, you see we already have lowered the peaks a bit and raised the RMS a bit, which is exactly what we want. So now it's time to check out the master 2-bus chain over here. Let's start by just A-Bing the whole chain.
Longer than my skirt. I sing with the evening birds. Fuck what you heard. Don't wanna be disturbed. I got the soul of an upler's name. All the pretty flowers, all the pretty.
Fantastic, right? So the SSL meter up here I already showed you. It has nothing to do with the actual audio. And then first in the chain is the UAD Manly Vari-Mood. We have a real one in the studio, and I just love it on this very setting. And since the plugin has a dry-wet control, I take advantage of this because, you know, this is just for a tiny bit of glue and more for the box tone of the Manly, which is why the dry wet comes in very handy. Next up is the P455 here, which sounds absolutely amazing and as good as every piece of real analog outboard I know. It's modeled after Mark Daniel Nelson's Real API sidecar, which was used, for example, to record Fleetwood Mac Rumors back in the day. He uses it for summing now, and it's also modeled his API EQ here. These settings here are the ones I always start with, and 99% of the time I don't change anything. After this, there's the Gullfoss Master here on a setting I also never change. This is just reacting to the audio in real time, making sure all parts of the frequency spectrum are presented the best they can at any given moment, unmasking pretty much in real time. And then at the end here, there's my SSL Fusion outboard with my SSL bus compressor on the insert. And you guessed it, their settings are never changed. Let's listen again.
You can look up the sky blue sea. You can look down the deep blue peak. You ain't never find someone better
Do you hear what everything contributes before the fusion does the heavy lifting? It's subtle but important changes, and this is what we're looking for. The mellow glue of the manly, the width of the sidecar, which really fills the space between the instruments nicely, and the Galfos just making the mix a tiny bit clearer and more balanced sounding. The fusion then is the whole package. I'm using all its sections here. The vintage drive, the EQ, the high frequency compressor, the stereo image, all of it. Then again, my SSL bus comp in the insert, pre-EQ. The whole fusion chain is calibrated to minus 14 dB FS. And that's because the 4 ABCD sub-stereos, which are, remember, calibrated to minus 18, of course, they all add up at the final stereo bus. So now, since I have the stereo master fader here, I can still push more into this chain. Should I want to? Let's have a listen.
You can look up the sky blue sea. You can look down the deep blue peak. You ain't never find someone better than me. Hair longer than my skirt. I sing with evening birds. Fuck what you heard.
Of course, this is also a great way to kind of inject a bit of excitement for the chorus instead of just writing the final output fader. The whole point of the setup here is that you are mixing your tracks into all these calibrated compressors, you know? And since they are the same on every mix, you can rely on their response, which makes it easy to know if you are actually in the sweet spot or not. It's better to know this by listening than by looking at the meters, but they still tell you something, of course. For example, if I see my actual bus comp, which is in front of me here, if I see it doing more than 2 dB of gain reduction on the needle, I know I'm too loud. Usually I will have heard this already, but sometimes, you know, the longer you mix, sometimes it's easy to get carried away with the compression or something. And then it's great to have that visual thing, you know, and just drop the stereo fader down again and then raise it up from the bottom until you really hear where the sweet spot is. And sometimes you wonder where you end up. Sometimes you end up like 3 dB lower than you were. Sometimes maybe you are even higher than you were before because you realize how good this sounds. So all of this is possible. But again, this is why if you're using plugins, which you'll likely do, it's so cool that you can see your bus compressors here in 360 in the center section. So now let's take a moment and be against the rough again, just listening and figuring out what we still actually need to do here.
You can look up the sky blue sea. You can look down the deep blue peak. You ain't all the pretty flowers, flowers. All the pretty flowers, flowers. Are they pretty? Are they pretty? Are they pretty flowers, flowers?
So for me, there's really not that much left to do, right? I want to make sure her vocal gives command at all times without being too loud, because I don't like vocals that are like super loud in front of the music. This always sounds bad on Bluetooth speakers, which so many people use for listening to music these days. And she definitely needs more reverb for the vibe. There's still something in the low mids where we need to make sure not all the instruments are too heavy here. Let's start by showing you how the send return compression for the bass and vocals actually works. You can see that the bass track as well as the lead vocal track here, they are both routed to something called float. Here's the bass float and here's the lead vocal float. And then these two auxes, they are set to no bus up here in the output section. This is German for no bus. So they are going nowhere. They don't output any sound. They only work as kind of a distributor to send to a couple of different tracks. On the bass, it's a body and a neck track here. On the vocal, it's 4 different tracks with compressors. So what's important to understand is that these are, of course, in parallel to each other. So this is parallel compression, but without a dry signal in the mix. The dry lead vocal here isn't present in the mix since it's going to this float, and from there it's sent to these 4 compressors. So my actual lead vocal sound is just the combination of these 4 faders, which are then feeding this lead vocal master. So I have easy access to the complete lead vocal blend as a whole. Please listen to how the actual lead vocal track itself sounds and then compare it to how the lead vocal master sounds.
All the pretty flowers, flowers. All the pretty flowers, flowers. Aren't they pretty? Aren't they pretty? All the pretty flowers, flowers.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. You think the lead vocal master is much louder and thus just sounds better. Well, yes, but no. It does sound louder, yes, but on the meters, it's not. And all the compressors doing their thing here makes the vocal so vibrant and present that it feels louder. Michael Brauer, he got this technique from engineer David Kahn, because Brauer always had been impressed how Kahn always managed to have the vocals sounding up front, but somehow low in the mix, you know, like don't killing the meters. And well, this is how. Brauer uses more than 4 faders here, but for me this is perfectly enough. I have my 1176 Blue Stripe clone here. This here is the Weight Tank Variable compressor by Locomotive Audio. This here is the Audioscape LA2A, and here again is a channel of my Sabatron tube preamp. The 1176 sounds kind of tight and pushy. The Weight Tank is fat and muscular sounding and a little spitty and aggressive. The 2A is like bold and sexy. And the Sabatron is just super aggressive with a lot of high end in it. Listen to this.
All the pretty flowers, flowers. Aren't they pretty? Aren't they pretty? All the pretty flowers, flowers.
So you can hear that the Sabatron is very, very central to the vocal sound here. And the great thing is I can automate and mute all of these individually. Maybe only use the Sabatron in the chorus, maybe have the 1176 higher in the verse and the Weight Tank lower, then change the relation in the chorus, whatever. It's just a super fun way to shape your lead vocal sound, and usually there's very little EQ needed, and oftentimes, like in this case here, I just leave all these faders at the same position. Because again, these are all calibrated for unity gain with roughly the same gain reduction. So I know that when I have the faders at the same position here, they kind of all give me the same level, you know? So I can really go from here, and I'm using this for so many years now that they just work so well together. And for you to incorporate this technique, it's important that you just have different sounding compressors on all of these, you know? Pretty much like I do here, maybe have kind of fat compressor like the 1176 on one, an opto compressor, which is much slower on the next one, a Varimu or other type of compressor, and maybe something like the Dolby A-type emulation or something where I use the Sabatron or really distort the vocal, whatever. But make sure you have very, very different vocal sounds which you all like by themselves in place here for this technique to make sense. If you see here, I have an instance of Soothe 2 here on the lead vocal float to make sure we can control some of the boominess and some of the harshness of the vocal before going into the compressors. And again, what's great is I can also map Soothe to the 360 link. So now I can use the EQ controls of the channel strip to shape the response of the filter bands in Soothe. Again, doing this from the 360 console. Okay, so now let's compare the vocal in the mix.
All the pretty flowers, flowers. All the pretty flowers, flowers. All the pretty, all the pretty, all the pretty flowers, flowers.
What a difference, right? With the bass, it's the exact same idea. Here I'm just splitting the bass into a lower part, which is called body, and a higher, which is called neck. And these are not just simple crossover filters. They are pretty drastic EQ settings, actually, to feature the respective parts of the bass. And I have been using these EQ settings long before SSL came out with their own 4K channel strips. So I was using the Brainworks. And I noticed I couldn't just copy them over to another SSL channel strip. I tried it, but it didn't sound the same. So I just needed to click on the ready to go map here for the Brainworks 4KE and just copy over my settings. You see? And now they appear again within the 360 console. Usually these settings stay set the way they are, but I could work them here in the console should I want to. Let's have a listen.
You can look up.
So you hear the body still has some overtones and the neck still has some low end. There's this small and quirky golden H-Comp Junior on the body, which, although it's super small, sounds super huge, very unique. It's perfect for the job here. And on the neck is my Yuri 1176 Blackface Revision D, set to 8:1, pretty aggressive. And somehow usually all this just works perfectly. And I tell you, if not, then I would just like take the bass track itself, route it somewhere, and would process directly on this channel. Speaking of routing, you can see I like to start with the body going to the stereo and only the neck going to B. This is why I don't have a bass master in place, so I can route them independently. I can try different combinations. That's the beauty of this approach, but this is where I always like to start. And with a body and neck, I always start by making sure they roughly register the same on the meter here and that their combination matches the level of the bass in the rough mix.
You can look up the sky blue sea. You can look down the deep blue peak. You ain't never find someone better.
So for me, this is pretty perfect. And of course, this bass has far more low end by itself. It's my old precision bass with flats on it. This is the sound we wanted, pretty mellow. We can hear that it's still fat and big, but the boominess is already gone, pretty much, you know. And it's just great to have the option to shape the bass with having two faders here. So now I've shown you the whole framework of this setup, the master 2-bus chain, the ABCD multibus, the parallels, the room setup with the ocean way, and the send return setup for bass and vocals. And once this is calibrated and set up, all it takes is either importing the raw tracks into your template or your template session data into the actual session you have. Then routing things out, making sure the gain staging is right, and within a couple of minutes, actually, you pretty much already sound like a record. Now, let's do the few final tweaks on the tracks that need it. If you look at this SSL channel, you see I'm using the preamp up here. This emulates the console's mic preamp with the Jensen transformer. The newer Waves and UAD strips also offer this feature. But with the SSL, I like how perfectly gain compensated this is. So when turning this knob, I really only add character and not level. So I like to start with a little bit of that on all my channels just for some vibe, but the difference really isn't that big.
All the pretty flowers, flowers. All the pretty flowers,
hear it just a tiny bit more solid, that's all. Only the loudest signals like kick and bass and vocals make the saturation LED even go green here. And now let me show you how I would normally set up the channel compressor to go with the pre as my starting point. There's two ways of using this. So the first one is you decide on the ratio you want to have, and then adjust the threshold where you want to go. And then there's another approach. It's pretty much a classic, but somehow lately it created some buzz being called the secret SSL trick or whatever on the internet. What this means is you just crank your threshold all the way up, and then you use the ratio to give you the amount of compression you want. For me, usually it's the first LED here. Listen. I love it, but the way the auto gain works always makes the compressed signal louder. Often this is actually what you want, but sometimes this can whack your balance. So what I like to do is have the threshold at 0 and the ratio at noon up here, which is 5:1, I believe. And now even if we likely don't see any compression happening on the meters, the louder signal still will be above the threshold sometimes. And with this setup, the quirky auto gain will bring up the lower signals just the right amount. So let's set up all the channel compressors this way here and listen to what it does. Still, the mix is getting a little louder, I know, but I hope you can hear how everything sounds more cohesive and more solid now. Down here, let's use this output trim, which is purely digital, to lower all the channels about 1 dB, so we keep unity gain. Okay, so now we're not getting louder, but still benefit from the added glue. And from here, when I want more compression on the track, I can just crank the threshold higher from 0. Let's do this with a snare in the bridge, for example, and get the first LED really going. Yeah, that sounds great. Now, there's only 2 attack settings on this, which I love because it takes out any guesswork. The auto attack is around 30 milliseconds, but it's program dependent. This is great when you want to keep the transients, like on the snare, so the signal stays up front. And then you have the fast attack here, which, fastens the attack to 3 milliseconds. And this is great for grabbing transients on signals you want to put a little more in the background. So just with this, we can further enhance our front to back perspective in the mix. For example, if I put the bass here to fast attack, it will kind of put it behind the attack of the kick drum and separate those two a little more. Check it out.
You
Now let's also try the fast attack on the main guitar here to put it a little behind her vocal.
All the pretty flowers, flowers, all the pretty flowers, flowers. Are they pretty? Are they pretty? All the pretty flowers, flowers.
Very nice. Now let's see what we need to do EQ-wise. So let me just run the track from the top and show you why this is so great for working really fast. Let's go.
Hair longer than my shirt.
Okay, so let's start by removing some 500 on the main guitar here to clear it up.
I like my things absurd. I like a man who's a man of his word. Oh, like the sweetest.
Okay, now when the drums enter, I feel we need a little more of the hi-hat. So let's add some of that famous SSL 8K and maybe a little more saturation.
If you wanna flirt, meet me.
Nice. Now here in the bridge, there's this other guitar on the right which needs to cut through a little more. So let's get rid of all that low end here we don't need and add some mid-range and some top. Okay, now I feel maybe let's clear up the piano a little bit. So we add some 6K and remove 300. Okay, the toms here, they definitely don't need all the high end and attack. So let's use the filters here and low pass at around 7K and clear up the bottom a little. Speaking of which, let's high pass the kicks and snares as well. So maybe go 30 cycles on the kicks and about 100 on the snares. I feel we still need a little more punch on the kick, so let's use the sample track here for this and add some mid-range around here, like 1K. That sounds nice. Let's try more saturation also on the recorded real kick to kind of round off the attack. Yeah, very cool. So pretty much within just one pass, I could do pretty much everything I wanted to do, because the 360 console lets me do this so fast because everything is right in front of me. So let's listen again now and pay attention to the subgroups. Remember that at the beginning I told you I like to use the P450 EQ, just gently pre-shape all the instrument layers a little before going to the ABCD. Guitars, you see me filtering at 80 Hertz, adding a dB of 10K, and here at 3K as well. It's taking out some 500. Lead vocal, I filtered at 120 Hertz, took out some 400 and 500 here, added a little presence. And on the keys, I took out some lows and added some mid-range for them to cut through. And now let's compare with and without these subgroup EQs. They just do what we want, which is separating the instruments a little more, giving just a little more space for everybody. So now let's do another pass, focusing on her voice. You see this reverb track here? I just bounced it from the rough mix, because we loved the way it sounded. Let's have a listen. So the bounce verb, it has the vocals, a little snare, piano, steel guitar, And right next to it here, I have the exact same reverb patch we used on the rough mix setup. It's the Sunset Sound reverb, which I love and pretty much use for most of my reverb duties on every mix. So this echo plate here is the actual setting we had going on the rough, which you heard on the bounce reverb. And right now I'm thinking I maybe just keep the bounce reverb as is in the mix and just put her vocal and maybe the snare sample in the bridge into this here for, yeah, some more of the same reverb.
You can look at the blue sea. You can look down the deep blue peak. You ain't never find someone better than me. Hair longer than my skirt. I sing with you.
Yeah, that sounds nice. And I feel she definitely needs it for the vibe to come across. And it also helps the snare giving more depth to the bridge, more dimension. Now that I hear it, maybe let's put the theremin in here as well, because it's super low in the mix. But we love this crazy haunting thing it adds. So why not drench it in the verb? Let's see.
Feeling birds fuck. All the pretty flowers, flowers, all the pretty.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I'm still thinking whether we need to compress the piano a little more, so let's try that.
Flowers, flowers, are they pretty? Are they pretty? Are the pretty flowers, flowers, are the pretty flowers, flowers, are the pretty flowers, flowers, are they pretty? Are they pretty?
Well, I feel it does actually help, but I think I'd rather not compress it more and instead write the volume a little more extensively, so I make sure the piano is always in the right spot. I like it open as it is. I like the dynamics. So now let's try putting the background vocals into the echo I've set up here, which is the soft tube tape echo on quarter notes. Let's go to the bridge and listen to this.
You can look at the blue sea. You can look down the deep blue peak. You can look at the sky blue sea. You can look down the deep blue peak. You ain't never.
Yeah, I like it. It's not too much, but it's adding to, as I mentioned, like this haunting feeling to the whole part. Let's check in the outro here.
All the pretty flowers, flowers, all the pretty flowers, flowers, are they pretty? Are they pretty? Are the pretty flowers, flowers, are the pretty flowers?
Yeah, of course, the echo here is more obvious, so we need less of it. So we pretty much can't really hear it, but still feel how the echo fills the gaps here nicely. Okay, so from here, it's basically just automation for me. I think everything is in a great spot, and I just want to make sure her vocal always sits perfect. As mentioned, the piano can be heard nicely with all the little licks it plays. The steel guitar, yeah, kind of wraps itself around the piano. I think it needs to take the spotlight in just a couple of moments throughout the song and then move back into the background. Also, I can hear me write the reverb return in some spots to emphasize the lyrics a little more. On a track like this, I don't really see me writing the parallels that much because, yeah, the bridge is already going big and the dynamics are pretty much right throughout the arrangement. Maybe I will write the ocean way room in the bridge to enhance the space even more. And then when it goes back to the verse, leave that one like really dry for some additional contrast. Yeah, just a couple ideas to try. Let me just do this, but speed the whole process up for you because it will take some time. Stay tuned. Okay, so now here's the mix with the automation I just did and ready to send out to the artist. And remember, using this setup, this whole process would have taken me about an hour max, rather even less than 1 hour. It's just routing the tracks within the template, putting the SSL channels and subgroup EQs on, making sure I match the balance of the rough, then listening to what is actually needed to be done and work my way really quickly through the virtual console, do the automation, and voila. So before wrapping this up with a final AB, I want to say thank you for taking the time to follow me along here. I hope you liked it, and I hope I could inspire you to try this workflow or at least parts of it yourself. And of course that it will improve your mixes and make you enjoy the mixing process more than ever. I love working this way. It's a lot of fun to use. And if you like the video, make sure to check out my Sound on Sound articles linked in the description. Touch on many things you saw here, like the calibration. Yeah, happy mixing and hope to see you next time.
Longer than my shirt. I'm not a good beggar. Don't need to scream to be heard. I like my things absurd. I like a man who's a man of his word. Like the sweetest desserts, eat it until it hurts. It's what I deserve. If you wanna flirt, meet me at the edge of the world. You can look up the sky blue sea. You can look down the deep blue peak. You ain't never find someone better than me. Longer than my skirt. I sing with the evening birds. Fuck what you heard. Don't wanna be disturbed. I got the soul of an upler's nerd.